Arch-Grand Commodore Luthor Harkon. Such a prestigious title for a vampire lord who has lost what little sanity he may have had. He rules the lands of the Vampire Coast in the continent of Lustria. Ruling being a loose term, for the dreaded vampire lord spends his time between the jungles of Lustria and the mighty seas, plundering what ruins or ships that may cross his path. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Many do not know that Commodore Harkon is very old, ancient to be in fact. Born to a tribe of hillmen known as the Harkoni, who dwelt in the hills near the grand city of Lemire. Luthor, or Luthor as he was known in life, was alive many years before the human life of Sigmar himself. He was a well-known fighter, eventually finding himself in positions of prestige within Lemire. It is speculated that Abarash the Blood Dragon is the vampire that gave Luthor the Blood Kiss, allowing Luthor's transformation into not only a vampire, but one of the Blood Dragons. Given Luthor's military capabilities, and Abarash's turning of only the best fighters he encountered, this is a commonly accepted theory. Luthor would serve without question. Many people believe he was fiercely loyal to his supposed sire. And when the fall of Lemire finally came, he followed his master to the lands of the Strigoi Empire, where once again Luthor would serve without question. It is unknown how Luthor managed to survive the devastating fall of the Strigoi Empire, especially since the vampire had also managed to slip out of the sights of anything living or dead, as if he had never existed. Centuries later, Luthor finally made his reappearance to the known world, or better said, to the New World, to the West. An imperial merchant ship was traveling the Great Seas. More than likely, they were unbound to travel to the colonies formed in the West by the various kingdoms of the Old World. It can be speculated that they held cargo from various cultures, trinkets, heirlooms, and more. Within that cargo was also an ancient coffin. Unknown to the traders, the coffin was no mere relic. It was the coffin of Luthor Harkon, and the vampire slumbered within. Maybe they wouldn't have ever known that the vampire slumbered within, were it not for the intervention of a Norscan raiding party. Many of the Imperials were slain or enslaved. The ship was looted of all its valuables, including Luthor's coffin. The Norscans had been unaware of the coffin's owner, and continued to search the coast of Lustria. Eventually, the Norscan ship saw itself docked in a decayed state in the eastern reaches of Lustria. The Norscans, much like their ship, had also been changed. Some now walked the world between life and death. Others were brought back from the dead, while those who still yet lived were enslaved. The Northmen no longer served the gods of the North. They served the now reborn Luthor Harkon. Luthor now found himself very far from home. A vast sea separated him from his homeland, but Luthor did not care. This was a new world for him, with many opportunities. He would not be overshadowed by his sire. Here he could carve a kingdom for himself. While Lustria did not have many humans for Luthor to enslave, Lustria did have many merchant ships pass through the area. The coast itself was very treacherous, which served for easy picking for the vampire to bolster his forces and come into contact with many magical artifacts. Luthor would raise both the crews and the sunken ships. Soon, the dreaded undead fleet was a force to be reckoned with. Soon enough, merchant ships would tell tales of this very undead fleet. So merchants would travel there less and less, in fear of joining the fleet in death. Luthor enjoyed his newly found kingdom. But the vampire, like many others of his kind, are incredibly greedy and vain. Luthor wanted more. He would not be denied. He would send his undead host to scour the lands of Lustria, scavenging long-abandoned lizardmen cities in hopes of coming across magical artifacts. Some of these cities did have the items he sought. This allowed him to magically augment his servants to the point that the zombie pirates are well known to harness ranged weapons, which is mostly unseen within the ranks of the undead. One such city was the ruined city of Hautel. So far, various cities have borne bountiful fruit, and why should this city be any different? He and his hordes would essentially flip the city over, searching every single building for any hidden vaults. Eventually, coming across an undisturbed chamber, he was curious, and he would not be denied. He ordered his servants to break down the magically sealed doors, but time and time again they failed. The vampire's magics were worthless against the chamber. Upon contact, the zombies would be released from their torment and withered away. This enraged Luthor, as so far he had not been denied for such a long period. The vain vampire lord took matters into his own hands and attacked the chamber himself. Once again, even his dark magics were not enough. The harder he attacked, the more the chamber itself would drain not only his magical ability, but his very life force. Still, the chamber stood firm, and Harkon attacked harder and harder, to the point that the chamber now began to collapse. With Luthor realizing that if he did not leave, he would surely die. The kingdom he worked hard to build, the vampire coast, would wither away without him. With every last ounce of his strength, Luthor managed to break free from the magical barrier protecting the chamber, and began his escape. Luthor was free. He still lived, but he was changed. The magical barrier broke his connection with the winds of magic. He was now unable to cast spells other than raising the dead and controlling the hordes. Interestingly enough, it would seem that he somehow bonded with the magical barrier, for now he emits a strange anti-magic field. Spells could no longer harm him. This, however, fractured his mind. Multiple versions of himself battled for control for his mind, with some taking control for short periods of time before being replaced by another. The vampire was broken, but still somewhat self-aware. More often than not, Luthor was known for his bouts of insane rage and his eccentric personality, which has led to the Vampire Coast becoming relatively well known to the lizardmen of Lustria. Luthor, or better yet said, all the mental versions of Luthor, do seem to have a common goal. It would seem that they wish to become whole once again, and all his mental states commonly work onto finding as many lizardmen artifacts as possible, in hopes that one may cure his insanity and allow him to regain connection to the winds of magic. Because of this, Luthor has become a thorn in the side of the lizardmen's great plan. For Harkon's undead hordes have laid waste to many ancient cities, laying siege to cities still occupied by various slan. Many skirmishes have been fought in the continent of Lustria, but the lizardmen, while mostly repelling the zombie hordes, were unable to fully expel the vampire and his servants from the vast jungle lands. While many of the dead would be destroyed or eaten, Harkon would take more and more merchant ships into his ranks, eventually amassing a horde rivaling that of even the great necromancers of the old world. Luthor would achieve feats that even the local Skaven hordes would dream of, such as the complete sacking and destruction of lizardmen cities, even going as far as destroying the great temple city of Axlotl, taking ancient artifacts for himself and delivering a major blow to the lizardmen. More and more, Luthor, while still fractured, would increase his power. He was a smart vampire. He knew the stronger he became, the more attention he would receive, and thus he would send emissaries to neighboring warlords in hopes to ally with them or even enslave them. His emissaries would offer these warlords but a simple gift: Harkon's famed ebony skulls. These skulls had the power to call forth his undead servants to aid the warlords. With this, Harkon would gain many powerful allies, and thus be able to invade ancient temple cities at a faster rate in hopes of regaining his lost sanity. Luthor would be a scourge in Lustria for many years, but despite his best efforts, his quest continues. A great quote to go into detail regarding Luthor's state of mind and ambition is as follows: "From dark place I came, and to darker places still I travel, dear heart. Worm-midden and filth my crib, man-flesh, and dead thing my down. To the coast of far away I sailed, to delve in dusty place, not for glimmer nor spark, but for lizard word parchment and age-crusted name. Secrets and lies from the birth of time, so all that is hidden be mine, my dear. Slime-thing lovers call sailors to salty death in my name." With a touch, he rises once more. Brine blood, vigor, her delight. Her kiss is clammy little death. Her song calls men from every land, and my servants walk the land of swamp, doing death for all time. Lizard stone tumble, and dead grey meat my supper. The names of the eldest spill from my lips. My love, Axolotl. The city of Lizard no more, its secret places, secrets abhorred. But now High Lizard cares to curse. Curse him thrice, in payment shall I. Now strangers heed the song of the brine maid, and glimmer they seek, as all men may. Multitudes and legions land on sacred shore, and make for Lizard home. I shall steer them to riches beyond dreaming, and do mischief to High Lizard, lordling aplenty. Mine emissaries make gifts to gridsome strangers. The skulls of the unliving carry soul scum skimmings, brine song echoing still. These they accept, for bauble and toy is all. In doing acceptance, they make abasement, for debt is eternal, beyond mortal man's ken. Now lizard things tremble, and stranger wreaks mischief across the land of the eldest. Glimmer greed grips the hearts of some, while others seek words, and others seek blood. Who prevails? I care not. I shall endure. Lizard things shall die, and green flesh shall wither. The names of the eldest shall be mine, and all dead things whisper my name, my love. For many years, Luthor continued his quest. His mind was broken, but still he pressed on. His vanity, perhaps the only thing from his past that he still held on to so dearly. He was the self-proclaimed pirate king of the Vampire Coast. From his kingdom he ruled. In the jungles he searched. His desperation was ever increasing, and when news broke that the great Nagash had once again returned, he willingly set sail to his side. Perhaps, he thought, Nagash may fix him, return him to his former glory. For that he would serve. He raised a mighty undead fleet. Practically the whole of the Vampire Coast was now empty, as they set sail to the ancient lands of Nehekara, his homeland, his past. Harkon was determined, and his fleet would not be stopped, even as the Tomb Kings set sail to slow down these forces. Luthor had magically enhanced his fleet to withstand the mighty Tomb Kings. Naturally, the Nehekarans, being ancient warriors in their own right, would meet the dreaded zombie pirates and attempt to break them. As the Tomb King ships sailed to meet the vampire fleet head-on, screaming catapults would provide support from afar. Had these catapults had free rein to fire, Harkon and his forces would have been repelled or destroyed. Luckily, over the years, Luthor had sired many vampires who were unnaturally loyal to him, where his second-in-command, Captain Drekla, managed to make it to the shores and silence the catapults personally. Now that the catapults had been dealt with, Luthor commanded his undead to let loose the salamander bladders they had been keeping in storage. A secret weapon in the vampire's arsenal, which would make the ships of the Tomb Kings catch fire more easily. This would prove that although Luthor's mind was fractured, he was still a brilliant tactician nonetheless. many ships would be destroyed, including some of Luthor's very own warships. But this mattered not, for the dead were replaceable. The vampiric servants would fight on until the last of the Tomb King's ships now sunk. None would deny the Pirate King. Harkon and his forces would continue to raid and plunder any Nehecaran settlements they would come across as they made their way to the very jewel of the kingdom itself, Khemri. Many ancient kings would be killed during this dark march, with Luthor time and time again breaking enemy lines, coming to the aid of his fellow vampires when needed, even at some point rescuing the famed Manfred von Carstein. It is no surprise that Luthor would arrive late to the Battle of Khemri. He is after all a pirate, and would not squander the chance to loot any ancient artifacts he could, much to Manfred's annoyance. Yet in Luthor's mind, as long as he reached there, and the battle was won, his job was done. Khemri eventually fell to the might of the vampires. Luthor, for his deeds, became one of Nagash's Mortarchs, the Mortarch of the Abyss. Luthor would continue to serve Nagash, even as the end times were starting to come to a close, and loyalty was starting to waver within the ranks of the vampires. He and his forces were dispatched to protect the eastern reach of Sylvania. A simple enough task, were it not for the horde of demons which were making their way to the rotting province. Demonic hordes, immensely powerful, led by the now possessed Isabella von Carstein and the Nameless, marched down to destroy Nagash and his servants. Naturally, the sight of these hordes raised alarms. The combined forces of vampires, specifically those of Manfred and Luthor, would meet the demons. While Manfred did not like Luthor one bit, they would have to work together. Their combined armies would hold back the demons, using strategies thought impossible by the minds of the dead. Still the demons pressed on, slowly beating away at the rotting corpses. Harkon's forces, those being the front line, were taking heavy losses. Whereas Manfred, even after realizing this, would not spare his dead to aid the Pirate King. In fact, after seeing that Harkon intended to charge, the Lord of Sylvania used his magics to play with the long-dead pirates, leading for some demons to directly assault Luthor. The demons were too weak to kill Luthor, but it amused Manfred nonetheless. Sadly, however, while the dead continued to rise, the demons would continue to materialize. The magic of the vampires would eventually wear thin, whereas the winds of magic would favor the demons in this time of war. This forced the vampires to retreat to the inn, the Dead and Buried. There, they would potentially make their last stand. As can be expected, having both Luthor and Manfred locked in a small building together would bring disastrous results. The two bickered, with Luthor at one point holding a knife to Manfred's throat. Not like he would have been able to end Manfred, for the Lord of Sylvania is incredibly powerful, nor should he want to, as Manfred is an asset in these trying times. despite his animalistic nature. Thankfully, the arrival of Vlad von Carstein saved Luthor from a possible death, where the sire of the von Carstein bloodline quickly took command in an effort to repel the oncoming demon invaders. The demons once again came with numbers beyond counting. Luthor led one of the defensive forces. In many cases, his bouts of insanity would return to him, but his loyal second-in-command, Captain Dracula, would keep him from harm. The battle was long and hard. Many of the dead would be destroyed, and many demons banished back to the warp, but eventually the demons would press on. The dead were crumbling. Even the might of these great vampire lords combined could not hold the endless onslaught. As lesser demons fell, greater demons appeared. A great unclean one had arrived onto the battlefield and headed directly for Luthor. Luthor was able to hold his ground, but even his skill was no match for one of Papa Nurgle's chosen. The great demon lunged at Luthor with a barrage of attacks, so lethal that the Pirate King would have died were it not for the ever-loyal Dracula giving his life and taking the blow. Dracula, Luthor Harkon's most loyal servant, lay dead, sacrificing his existence to protect his master, his sire, and possibly even his friend. Interestingly, it was at this point where Manfred, taking advantage of the situation, slew the greater demon. Not to save Luthor, but rather to steal the demon's powers for himself and replenish his mount. After doing so, Manfred began his retreat. Luthor, at this point, was exhausted and tried to flee, but he lacked the energy. Making a desperate attempt to grab hold onto Manfred's mount, he ran with what little energy he could muster and jumped. Success, but not for long. Manfred had no intention of saving the mad vampire, and thus sliced off his arm at the elbow. Luthor fell to the floor, his fall cushioned by the bodies of rotting corpses. Crippled by the impact, Luthor forced himself to stand. Perhaps he knew the end was near, but he would not fall without a fight. He would strike down countless demons, screaming in a bloody, rage-induced madness. One by one they fell, but his doom eventually came. For the demonically possessed Isabella von Carstein was far more powerful than he, and she now stood as his challenger. Beating him down until he could fight no longer, Luthor lay on the floor defeated. Plague bearers would hold the Lord of the Vampire Coast up, restrained by their pestilent might. Isabella walked closer, muttering calming words, embracing Luthor's body. It was then that Luthor Harkon, Arch Grand Commodore Luthor Harkon, Lord of the Vampire Coast, fell. His body collapsed into a foul liquid. His story now over, and forgotten shortly after, with the ending of the world. And with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our lore video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. Thank you once again, and if you do want to keep in contact, there are social media links below, and I shall also see you again very, very soon. Have a good day.